You know, it's a great story when you know the ending and you're still turning every single page. It's fabulous. So, ladies and gentlemen, John Aldridge, Anthony Sosinski, he's alive.
Good to be alive. Good to be alive.
So what is it like for you guys hearing that song? I mean, I was standing backstage with you, trying to gauge your emotions, but you're very, it's tough to read, very poker face there.
It's hard not to cry every time.
It's moving.
Oh yeah,
It's moving.
It's unbelievable. It says it all. You know, it has a feeling that really puts into words.
Now, did you tell these guys you were working on it? Did they know this was in progress? Did they hear it for the first time? Surprised?
No, you know, it was wild because I do a Wednesday for almost 10 years now at the Surf Lodge. And I had worked on, I remember it was June 26th for some reason, and I had finished the song that morning. And as a rule, I usually don't really talk about songs or play them. I don't bounce things off people. I'm a solitary writer. So it's kind of like a jinx to play it for me. And I had finished it that morning. And they both showed up at that show, unbeknownst. And I do remember I went up to you and I said,
like, I can't believe
I can't believe you're here. I finished the song this morning and I would love to play it for you, because I was very sensitive to you were still, you know, understandably processing a lot of stuff. So I was concerned. And I'll tell you, I have never in my life had a reaction that day. First of all, people were talking and everything hushed down and there were grown men openly weeping. It really has touched a chord somewhere in, I think, the community, not just a man or a woman, but just that we are a community and that we did shut down and that we looked out for each other. That's what makes this book so phenomenal. No. It really you get that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it really is an amazing thing. This is the middle of the height of the season when this happened. I mean, Montauk probably could not have been busier. And, you know, Anthony, you were there, you know, during being part of the search. Nancy, you were there on land. John, you were there hoping somebody knows where I am.
Does anybody know I'm missing?
And yeah, if you could talk about what was it like as the community, you said, shut down and came together.
Well, I just want to thank everybody that's here for coming and supporting this and for supporting us here today. And I had a sneak preview on this song. Her son, Levon, sung a couple of verses on the beach.
That rat.
And we were cracking crab claws, and the kids started singing, "Hey ho, save Johnny Load," and she's like, "Shh." But the community has, you know, everybody gets lost when you don't live in a small town, and we actually live in a small town. So our small town, by them coming together on that day, was nothing that they wouldn't have done for somebody else, but they did it for us that day. And that was the difference in my feeling was, you know, we help people for no reason other than they need help. And that day, every single entity that could come and assist us left the dock, the Coast Guard, everything. So, you know, that was beautiful to me.
And even boats that were out with charters, and they come back in, drop the people off, and said, "We're going to go back out now and help you in the search."
They were already paid their day's pay. They brought the people back and said, "My wife will send you a check back, or she'll rebook you, but we have other things going on. Someone's lost." You know, on that day, I mean, Jimmy Buffett was shark fishing that day because of a shark tournament that was coming up. And our friend Paul Stern was the guide that day, and they took him, and he stood and got sunburned for 6 or 7 hours. Looking for him.
Still gotta
you know, I mean, you know, I have a lot of different stories about that, because even one particular man that I took to court and sued because I had worked for him on a fishing boat, and he was a concrete mason, and he bought a fishing boat, and I sued him about the pay, which I actually won. And
Side note on
he didn't, we weren't really the best of friends after that. And he went that morning, he heard at first light that Johnny was lost. He went to the town dock and collected any fisherman that had a slow boat And he brought him to the yacht club, and he got on his 56-foot Hatteras and steamed out there looking for him.
There was a lot of people sacrificed, a lot that day for me. I mean, between 3 different states of Coast Guard, assets, and then our community. I mean, I didn't realize it at the time, obviously, but afterwards, I was like so blown away by how affected people I didn't even know were from that day. You know, it was very overwhelming, very humbling too.
Sure.
Yeah.
So can you take us back, I know you've done this before, but to the night. So you're on the boat, you've left, Anthony and Mike are asleep, and here you are.
You know, we fish 60 miles from land, and it's a 9-hour ride out for us. So, you know, we rotate through the night. Anthony will sleep, and then I'll wake up. You know, he'll wake up, wake me up. You know, so we rotate through the night. That particular night, I was awake, and I was getting the boat ready for the next morning. And I had to get one of the coolers off of the hatch to get access to a tank on the boat. And as I pulled on the cooler, the handle had snapped. And I went flying out of the back of the boat with just my shorts on, my fishing boots, and a T-shirt, and my little pocket knife. You know, 2:30 in the morning, 45 miles from land. They're asleep in the front of the boat. Nobody in the world knows I'm missing. And there goes the boat away in the horizon, you know. And now, instantly, I have these birds dive bombing me. Second I hit the water, I had these birds start pecking at me and, you know, like, what is this in the ocean? There must be food if you know. And I guess that was some form of food for something. But so they started dive bombing, you know, and you're trying to swim, you're trying to stay afloat. You can't even believe you're in a situation. You're panicking. And my boots float up to the surface on my feet, and I'm backpedaling, really, and something clicked in my head, and I said, man, these boots are very buoyant. So I kick them off, and I take them off, and I empty the water out of them, and I push it back into the water, above the water, back into the water, and create an air pocket inside. And then I just put one under one arm here, and I put the other boot under the other arm, and then I didn't have to swim. I had my own makeshift life jacket. So that moment there gave me, thank you. That moment gave me time to think, because then I could assess the situation. I'm not just dying at this second, you know, because you know, you could think you could swim, but when you're in that panic mode and you can't believe you're in the middle of the ocean at night, no one knows you're there, you know, you exert all your energy right away. And I was going to drown, and the boots gave me that extra time to think, trying to figure out what's going on here. And I just started setting goals for myself, saying, all right, I got to stay alive to daylight. They're going to wake up eventually. And when they wake up, I know he's going to freak out and call the Coast Guard, you know? So I knew that was going to happen. I just had to get to that point of that. So, which, you know, who knows how long that could be. But so now I'm in the middle of the ocean, using my boots as buoyancy. And, you know, here comes 2 sharks. 15 feet away from me to pop right up, you know, here to the edge of the stage. And, you know, you can't even believe it. You're in such disbelief. You know, you're in the middle of the ocean freaking out to begin with, knowing that there's everything that lives here that's going to probably eat you. And then you see sharks. Yeah. And you're like, oh. So I had to process that, work through that, and, you know, not freak out totally. Try to get in my own head and calm my heart rate, calm my breathing, not be scared and really have them come check me out. And, you know, luckily, eventually they swam away, left me alone, or they just didn't appear again for me to see them. And then, you know, sunrise comes, and I hear a helicopter way off in the distance, and I know that he's awake then. And that's about 6:30, so that's about 3 hours I'm in the water now, 3.5 hours, you know, by myself. And now I know he's awake. So that's like a pick-me-up, you know. I'm like, oh, okay, that builds me up with hope. And then, you know, I'm watching through the day, you know, in the morning, and I see him go by me looking, and they don't see me. I see another lobster boat go by me, they don't see me. So, you know, and in that point, I was like, you know, in a negative sense, like, you know, I can't believe they didn't see me, they went past me, you know, oh my God, I'm gonna die, you know, what happens when you die? How do you know, who gets to know the day you're gonna die? You know, all of that stuff going through your head. And then I said to myself, I'm not dying. I'm not dying. That's not the way I'm going out. I'm not having the lobsters and the crabs that I catch eat me as revenge. That's not happening. So I just put it in my head that I'm not dying because, dying is real easy. It's real seductive. It's like it makes it okay to give up and everything. And I was like, wow, that's powerful. I don't like that. So I turned everything around into a positive. I wouldn't think about anything negative. I just thought of everything. He went past me. And I didn't think, oh, he went by, he didn't see me. I looked at it as, all right, at least he's still looking for me. So I turned everything around that way, and it was very empowering and very uplifting.
How close were they when you saw them?
I would imagine, a football field or two away. On the water it seems closer, but, on land it might, seem real close.
Right.
But they didn't see me, like I truly was a speck in the sea out there. I had, brown hair, blue T-shirt. It's not the best scenario to be missing in the ocean.
And the search area was tremendous. Like the size of Rhode Island,
Yeah,
right?
it was
Isn't that how it started out?
Yeah, well, at first, we start off with where the last time I had seen him. So when I woke up, well, actually our crew member, Mike, woke me up and was like, who was supposed to get this next watch, and says, Johnny's not on the boat. Which immediately I'm like, jump up. What do you mean he's not on the boat?
It's like unfathomable.
That's like unheard of. And I go running up the stairs and I look at my GPS Loran and I'm like, holy, I'm 62 miles from land. Like, I'm like far from, the last time I saw him was 5 miles from land. There's 50 plus miles of ocean between Montauk Lighthouse and where I am. So I turned the boat back towards land and immediately phoned the Coast Guard, told them my coordinates and my speed, and they, asked me basic questions about, what does he look like, height, weight, and,
Because of all the other people they might find out.
Well, yeah, he
What
said,
did we find?
no, we're looking for someone 150, not 165. So,
It's not him. Keep going.
no, they even asked me what he was wearing. One thing they asked me though is he a good swimmer? And I said, he's a good swimmer and he's very resourceful. Well, at the end of it, he used everything that he had on him to stay afloat. So the swimming was very minor. It was being resourceful, mentally, physically. Johnny stayed alive in the water a lot for mental, but physically, the job that we do, most people can't do physically. We do an 18-hour shift at the rail. At the end of it, we could barely lift our own arms up, and it's like time to go home. So for him to
I think you should take your shirt off and show us.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. But,
Okay.
Okay.
It's in the movie.
So I was really, my goal was to try to obviously find him and shrink down the search area because the search area was so big. And as the day had gone on, there was more and more fishing boats and people that wanted to help. So I was just actually listening recently to the transcript thing, and at 36 minutes into looking for him was when I found the cooler handle, and I was able to analyze things going on our boat, and I radioed the Coast Guard and told them where approximately I thought he fell in the water, which shrunk down from 50 miles area. We had shrunk it down to a 5 mile square. And in that 5 miles is where we orchestrated our search.
But they still passed me a couple times.
Oh, sure.
And we still didn't see him. And, and it's kind of this, though. Think of a shag carpet, and if you're on a wave and you're up here, you're only at the top of it for 2 or 3 seconds, and then you're back down into the trough. That's only if you know where something is that you're looking at it. So I'm facing this way now. He could be right here, and you're never going to see him. even if you're looking in where he is, you still only have approximately 3 seconds. So when you're scanning, looking for somebody in the ocean, you don't know how fast you should go. Should I go fast? Should I go slow? Should I be looking off the port side? Should I be looking off the starboard side? And I'm communicating the entire time with trying to convince the Coast Guard that they should still be looking for him, you know? And the pressure that our local community had given to the Coast Guard
They couldn't give up.
kept them
They couldn't give up.
to look for him. So there was a lot of variables. The day was a nice day considering. The next day, they never would have found him. You know, so the water temperature is normally not that warm, which is still cold. Like no one goes swimming in their pool at 71 degrees.
Yeah.
You know, so for him to be in the water that long, his adrenaline, he saved himself. You know, we got the cavalry there, and he kept himself long enough alive to grab him out.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the waves. This is not a flat ocean that John was out in by any stretch. This is what, 4 or 5 foot swells the whole night and day, right? So
Yeah, I was, ingesting water, trying not to, but it was going up my nose, down my mouth, just trying to stay afloat with, your chin on the water. So I was, knowing that you're not supposed to drink the salt water, but it was, it was going up my nose and in my mouth, and I was ingesting it, and,
It moves.
Constantly.
The whole ocean is moving
So-
at like a half a mile an hour with the Gulf
Right.
Stream.
So if you fall in the water here, you're going here, but it still looks like,
So hours into it, where he could have fell over, that water is somewhere else. So now, 12 hours of him being in the water, he should, in theory, be 6 miles away from where he fell in. But he wasn't, because he was holding on.
yeah, so tell about, so
So-
after you've decided, all right,
so
I'm not going to
daylight
die,
came, yeah.
I'm doing it.
So daylight comes, and I figured my salvation would be, because I knew in the ocean where I was, because that's where we live, and I knew where other lobstermen fish, and we were just north of our lobster gear. So I knew I was in the area where there was lobster buoys and stuff. So I figured, let me find a buoy. What else could I do? I mean, I'm floating in the middle of the ocean. I got to find something to hold on to. So I come up on a wave, I don't see anything, and then all of a sudden I see one way in the distance, and I said, all right, I'm going to swim in that direction. The boots under my arms. I got my arm like this, and I'm swimming with one arm, kicking, on the surface. And I finally get close enough to the first buoy, and the current, I didn't take into consideration the current, the ocean's moving, and I couldn't get to that buoy. So I had to cut my losses because I was exerting so much energy that I had to just say, all right, being that I'm a lobsterman, I knew what I was looking at. There was an east end buoy. I knew there'd be one to the west. So I focused in on going that direction. Another hour or two later, I see another buoy. I make the right choices on how
This
to
is
swim
a
to
half
it.
a mile apart. Sorry to
Yeah,
cut you
if not
off,
a little
but
more, yeah.
each buoy is approximately a half to 3/4 of a mile apart. So he's leaving one, and he's not seeing it, but he's going, all right, I know there's one a half a mile at least away, so I'm just going away from
Yeah.
the one that I can't get to.
So I get to that buoy, and once I grab it, I get pulled underwater because there's a swell, and that's connected to the bottom. So and the ocean just washes through the buoy. So I'm like sitting there for a little while. I'm going, this isn't good. I got my boots that keep me on the surface. I'm holding on to this buoy that's pulling me under the water every time a wave goes by. I'm like, this isn't good. And I see the helicopter going back and forth, and they're going back and forth over to the west more. So I'm like, I bet you they think I'm drifting. That's why they're looking over there and not here where I am. I don't know. I'm just thinking. So I say, I got to cut that buoy. I'll cut the buoy off. I have my little knife. I pull it out. I cut the rope, about 4 feet of rope, connected to this big orange ball, and I tie it around my wrist, and I start swimming in their direction. I see the helicopter, and I'm swimming like, you're going to see me, Couple more hours go by, I was exhausted, and I find another buoy, and I tie 2 of those big orange balls together, and I sit in between them. So now I got my boots under my arm, I'm sitting between this rope with the 2 buoys, and I'm getting pulled on, they're getting bounced back and forth, and I'm watching the sun, and I know it's getting late in the day. So I say to myself, I don't want to go back in the open ocean and try to figure this out. I'm just going to stay on this buoy here. Whatever happens, happens. If I die, I'm going to tie myself to it. As my friends peep his buoys. He's going to come through and haul the gear eventually, find me hanging there, the worst case scenario, and at least my parents will have, you know, some closure of sorts. But luckily that didn't happen. So I had seen the Coast Guard helicopter jet go by in the distance as I'm floating on those two buoys, and I say, "Man, I think that pilot might have seen me. I don't know." So I spin around to where he's going to be coming back on his pattern, and I said, I knew he was flying a pattern, and he comes by even closer, and I'm like, he had to have seen me, you know, he had to have seen me. Well, he didn't see me. I found that out later on. And then the helicopter, about an hour or so later, I see this helicopter come flying over the top of me, and I start waving and kicking and screaming, and he turns off of me and starts hovering here. So then I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to be saved, thank you, you know. And I turn my back because the wash is just so violent from the helicopter, and I feel a tap on my shoulder, and it's the rescue swimmer, and he swims up to me and he, sir, are you okay? I'm like, I got 2 more days left in me. He's like, I wasn't expecting a joke, you know? He goes, well, we've been in the air 9 hours today looking for you. And I said, I've been here 12 hours looking for you. Let's get the hell out of here. And he's like, don't worry, I got everything under control. And within 3 minutes, the basket landed right next to me. I mean, it was like unbelievable how professional those guys are. And that basket laid right next to me. Yeah. So he threw me in the basket, and my boots started floating away. And I said, I need those boots. They saved my life. And, you know, unbeknownst to me, that he broke protocol because you're not allowed to have anything in the basket because it could fly out and hit the helicopter and kill everybody. But he told me, put them under your legs, hold on tight, and, you know, up I went. And that was the scariest ride I've ever been on. I was like, I had to close my eyes going up, you know. I get into the helicopter, and, you know, they wheel me in. They're all looking at me like they can't believe they found me, you know, kind of a thing. And the pilot puts his mask back, and he goes, you got some will to live. You know, we've been up here for hours looking for you. And that's when I said, I got too many people that love me to die. I wasn't going out that way. And so he said, I couldn't drop you off in Montauk. He's like, but I could take you to Cape Cod. I'm like, I don't care where you take me. I'm with you guys. I don't care if we go to Hawaii right now. You know? So, yeah, and then, you know, in the hospital, and my core temperature was 93 degrees, and I had severe second-degree burn on my face from the sun. My tongue and mouth was swollen from being so dehydrated. And I couldn't eat for hours and hours or drink anything. It was just so on fire in my mouth from being so dehydrated. And then the next morning they kicked me out of the hospital, and this has been going on ever since.
So you're saved. You come back. Eventually, you go back on this boat.
Yeah.
How soon was that, and what was that like?
Well, Anthony had to get back the next day because we had fishing to do.
Right.
I took 2 trips off, which was about a 2-week span, just because my mother made me.
It's good to listen
You can't
to
go
your mother.
back. I'm like, why?
There was something the next trip that was
Weird.
pretty. You don't need to believe in God, but this is something that's like off the charts. So Johnny, the week before, had painted some buoys, and he writes on one of the buoys, "Load lives." So on my first trip back, the first buoy I grabbed the buoy, and right across the top says, "Load lives." And I was like, you got to be kidding.
So now if I would have died and he would have came back and saw that, that would have been me haunting him.
But I was just like blown away by that.
Yeah.
Which I still have the high flyer. I use it in my garden. It's one of the posts.
So now, John, you've gone out, and now you're speaking to schools and people at the Coast Guard. I mean, inspirational speaking. Yeah. Obviously, a few more inspiring stories than this. But what are some of the messages you give out there? What are some of the things you tell people?
Well, the big one for me is the positive thinking. I mean, that day, you know, like I was always like, you know, what if, you know, like always not saying, oh yeah, let's do it. I was like, what if, you know, but now, I mean, through that experience, the power of positive thinking was so overwhelmingly positive for me that it really, really, really made a difference. When your life is on the edge and you got negative and you got your positive, if you go with that negative, it's totally going to bring you down. It's totally going to eat you up and in any part of your life. But that day, the positive thinking and how it made such a difference in my survival, it was just so overwhelming. So, I tested all to that positive thinking and being mental in your head enough to, be able to handle that. But the positive thinking end of it was really what did it.
Yeah. So you've heard this whole story now. The line in Nancy's song, the helicopter, that was its last chance. Like if it didn't find you then, it was going back.
It was so low on fuel that after I found out afterwards, that they weren't even going to stop to pick me up. They were just going to mark me and send the boat over. But the rescue swimmer, he said that sometimes people who are in a situation like that, when they see hope like that, they'll lose it and see you fly away and then die. And he didn't want to have that happen, so they made a plan that they were going to send him in the water with me to stay with me until the cutter came if they didn't have enough time, or they were going to pick me up and leave him there if they didn't have enough time. So all of these different plans had to be made before they even picked me up, and luckily everything worked out so smoothly that they picked me up and him up, and we went back and got back, and they got back just in time before they ran out of fuel enough.
So back on land, Nancy, what was it like when the word came through that he's alive?
Really, the town, it was kind of, you have to understand, it's the height of summer, and everybody is working very long weeks out there, no different than anywhere else on the East End. And it kind of like shut down. I think in the book they call it like the communal web. It really did become like that, where everybody was suddenly, this was the most important priority, and everything else stopped. It didn't matter how many hot dogs you were selling or what the show was, or if there was a line at the IGA that went out the back. It became about, there was an enormous amount of positive thinking on land. I remember asking you afterwards, when I was trying to write the song, and the one line in the song that I would change if I could is, you say, I hope you're alive. You never hoped you said, I know he's alive. I know he's alive. I know he's alive. And you've said you don't go looking for a dead dog, but it's like...
You don't look for a dead person. You look for a live person.
Yeah.
So that was...
Yeah.
That was it. Mm-hmm. It's like the goal right here is we need to find John. There's no... we have urgency right here, right now. Every single second that's going away is the urgency.
And every boat that went out there, what you get if you haven't read the book, I really do recommend it, because it isn't just about him surviving. It's, for me, what I took away from it was it's just about life and surviving life and how important it is to keep that. I really do think there's so many people that have gotten so much that they didn't expect. They thought there was just going to be this kind of wilderness tale, and it's not. It's about choosing how you're going to live your life on any given day with what's thrown in front of you. And I will say that one of my deepest memories was when we met him when his boat pulled in that night. It was down at the dock, and there was a big full moon, and there was a bunch of people, and there was this giant, like 6'4" guy weeping, and he said, Anthony saved his life. He saved his life because he organized everybody. And what he had done is he had really, when he said he looked and saw that snapped handle, he was able to say, well, that handle snapped because he was pulling, which meant he must have been where the fathoms were, the colder water was running, which means he must have fallen off the boat between here and here, between this stuff. I mean, he really was like Sherlock Holmes, putting that all together and then trying to organize everybody. So it was a group effort across the board, for sure.
It's amazing, little details like that when you hear about the buoy, about the scientific and, Sherlock Holmes approach you take, the ridiculousness that you can float on these boots out there.
Yeah.
It sounds like a movie, which it's going to be. So the question I know you guys have been asked before, but I'm sure they're wondering, who do you want to play you in the movie?
I don't even know, I mean, there's so many great actors. Whoever's the most marketable, that's what I want.
Smart man.
That's the guy I want.
Anthony, who's going to play you?
I have no clue. Really.
Nancy, who should play these guys?
I don't know, but I think Helen Hunt is going to play me.
There you go.
There you go.
I think I don't know. I really it's hard. I do think that when the combination is put together, though, it'll probably be perfect because they're so involved in it, which is great.
Absolutely.
They've been hinting to us, but nothing is set in stone.
Yeah.
So we
Somebody you
don't
definitely know, though.
Great. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Anthony, John, Nancy, thank you so much for being part of this. It's been great. If you haven't read, oh yeah, please, everybody's coming up now. Look at that.
Thank you.
We stand up, right?
Thank you.
Stand up, right?
Thank you. If you have not read the book, as I said, we highly recommend it. After the award ceremony for the literary prize, there will be a cocktail reception and a book signing out there where they'll be signing this book. So come by, meet them, say hi, and again, we have a lot more show coming. Thank you, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.